Let's start out, Minister, with your current assessment of the state of affairs of Ontario's finances, and in particular, with light of the potential of tariffs, auto tariffs being imposed by President Trump. How are you assessing everything right now?
Well, I can tell you since Premier Ford's swearing in on Friday, there's a renewed optimism in the business community. I've received phone calls and social media commentary all weekend long that people said on Friday night was the first night they've slept soundly in a long time. So the business community is reacting very, very strongly to Premier Ford Ontario. Now, in his speech, he said one of the first things he will be doing is the Commission of Inquiry and a line-by-line review of the finances. So we'll do an assessment. The group will look at refining their practices and then coming out with how to find efficiencies. So it's not just about getting in and seeing what happened, it's about solutions. So
sure.
I think that will give us, over the coming weeks and months, a better picture of the financial assessment of Ontario.
But given the day-to-day moves from the United States as it relates to the potential changes in tariffs, what are you thinking, even from Friday to today, as it relates to what might happen to the Canadian auto industry, and of course that impacts Ontario greatly? Well,
it's, as you say, a changing landscape, certainly, and Premier Ford has said loudly and clearly that we stand shoulder to shoulder with our federal government, and we will do everything here in Ontario to protect Ontario jobs.
That's interesting, right? I'd like to stay with the trade file for a second, too, just because it's such a massive situation that we're dealing with. It's a national broadcast, but specifically for our Ontario viewers, manufacturing, specifically in the auto sector, Minister, is of utmost interest and priority to a lot of our viewers. As Catherine mentioned, you have a president south of the border now who hour to hour, day to day, that information changes on a dime. And now on top of aluminum, on top of steel, we now have to deal with the possibility of auto tariffs. And we're already getting the reports. Catherine's discussed them on the show here yesterday. RBC, Scotia Economics saying we're headed for a recession as early as 2019 if in fact auto tariffs are added to this whole this gong show. Your reaction to that? Are you all prepared? Are you and the Premier prepared to tackle this head on and bring results for Ontarians?
Well, two aspects. First of all, when you hear what Premier Ford has had to say, he will be meeting with many of the U.S. governors, especially the ones that were most actively involved in trading, where they're our largest trading partner, and further if they're our second largest trading partner. So right. He is going to be meeting face-to-face with many men and women of our team to be able to work with the governors. I think that's going to be pivotal. The Premier will play a pivotal role in this. From the back end, we are lowering corporate taxes, we're lowering small business taxes, we're lowering hydro costs, we're eliminating cap and trade. Those are all key signals to the business community that Ontario is open for business. So while we have that issue to face with, and I know that Premier Ford will be doing a spectacular job with the governors, we're fixing all of the other materials that were necessary to be fixed in Ontario to prepare the business community to be able to continue to grow and expand here in Ontario.
One of the advantages, of course, that I think a lot of the businesses, small businesses in the United States, as well as individuals have found under President Trump, is the tax reform for individuals, but also for expensing capital investment. Can you, within Ontario, also implement something on the capital investment front that would encourage more business spending now versus later? I don't know where that stands in terms of what you're allowed to do, but what are you thinking? Anything there?
And he just cracked up on the box.
Well, this is day 2 in the office, but I can tell you the 20% tax cut for the middle class is important. Employers need to know that that's coming for their employees as well. The reduction in the corporate tax rate as well, the small business tax rate, those are critical to be able to give us back the advantage we had with the U.S. You know, when they came down so much, fiscal conservatives, we believe lower taxes create jobs. And so we look forward to reducing the tax burden on the people of Ontario and for the business to create those jobs.
Just one follow-up on that. Some people would say we can't afford that. We can't afford to lower taxes. What do you say to those people?
For the past 15 years, we've had increasing taxes and we've had deficits. Lower taxes create jobs. That's our fundamental and our core belief.
I want to stay with that and just pivot over, if we can, to housing. That's another big portfolio, another big sector that is huge for BNN Bloomberg and our viewers. We've had the Premier come out and say he's not impressed with that 15% foreign buyers tax. Then you have economists saying, hey, if you get rid of that tax, that's the reason why we prevented the housing bubble. Where do you stand on that front with respect to housing? Number one, for investors, full disclosure, Catherine and I are investors in that area, but also for folks who want to get into the market, who want to buy their first home. What do you say to them who are watching today?
Well, certainly the tax reduction or the tax tightening had an effect on the market. There's no question that it did what the government said it would do, and it cooled the market as it would have expected. Now, what we saw this last quarter was certainly the changes in the mortgage availability has also done that to the same extent. So we will continue.
Has it done too much?
Well, you know, you want affordable housing for families. I think you'll see us with our Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing and through Premier Ford and our entire cabinet will continue to monitor this and continue to look at where do we need to be involved and do we need to be involved in that sector.
What's your view in terms of the land transfer tax right now? Because many people would say that needs to be removed. But at the same time, too, if you did, presumably that would allow more people to afford more homes.
Well, let me say I truly believe that to be a Toronto issue.
And we should say you're not from Toronto originally.
I live in North Bay area. I was born in.
What does that mean? What does that mean? It's a Toronto issue, but it's a big issue.
Well, it is a big issue.
Toronto's a key driver of the Ontario economy.
Yes,
right.
no, it is something, but it is a question for you to be asking your municipal government because that's where the revenue ends up as well. But I was born and raised in North Bay, and I've lived in Northern Ontario all my life, and so in our community of Corbeil, we have very different issues, as you were alluding to.
Absolutely. Minister, I want to talk about the situation with respect to cap and trade. We're getting a lot of emails on this. Yep. We won't say the names, but ever since we tweeted out and put on Instagram that the minister was joining us for this exclusive interview, you're quite a popular gentleman, by the way, folks are saying, hey, we want to know about cap and trade now that it's pretty much been nixed by the Premier. That was the first order of business. Those are the words of Doug Ford. Are you afraid, are you worried at all about possibly being sued over the cancellation of this? Like, what do you do now with all that money that the government's holding on to?
Sued by the federal government.
Right.
Well, it's, there's a lot to unpack in that. First of all, we will continue to invest. Our campaign commitment was to invest $500 million in our environment, so that will continue. We heard loud and clear from the people of Ontario who elected us on our commitment to eliminate cap and trade in Ontario. It was never truly used for any greenhouse gas reduction. The Auditor General told us that 80% of the benefits accrued to either California or Quebec, right. That this was, to be a little bit crude, it was more a slush fund in terms of the dollars. So let's just be clear about that very little accrued towards any improvement in our environment. But we will have a methodical wind down of the program. We'll honor commitments, and it will be a respectful wind down of that program that will happen starting now. I
just want to ask you a follow-up question to that, if I may. You mentioned the Liberals, the elephant in the room that's no longer perhaps, but they campaigned and obviously lost on their strategy of return to massive spending, deficit spending. They were even projecting, what, $10 billion plus in new debt annually for the foreseeable future. So not even an end date in that regard. You all have been brought in, like you said off the top of this interview. It looks like folks want a change. What is your strategy moving forward? Everyone says they want to cut taxes, they want to find new spending, but what are you interested in preserving as well for the people of Ontario? How do you find that balance, Minister?
You used the words, it's for the people. Premier Ford has said to us, every decision that we make, before we do something, anything, Is it for the people? What does it do for the people? So we will look for efficiencies. So take an example of OHIP Plus. You know, it was rolled out. It was bungled when it was rolled out. It was more of a campaign photo op than truly rolled out properly. So we have made major changes to that so that everybody still is covered. Everybody 25 and under still has coverage, only it doesn't cost the government the amount of money that it was going to cost. Nobody lost a job. That's an efficiency. That's exactly the efficiencies that Premier Ford is talking about. We want to deliver excellent services to the people, but it's for the people. We need to look for those efficiencies.
Where do you see your government wanting to spend money? And when I say spend, I mean invest money. We talk so much about the tech sector here in Ontario. I don't know if you've looked at that yet, or where do you really see the opportunities? Where have you been talking about where the opportunities are right now? And what about, we talk about made in Canada right now, or we talk about made in Ontario? What are we thinking?
Well, again, lots to unpack there. Go back to one of the real issues that we had in the education system. We are graduating students and they're not ending up with a job. We want to make sure that we invest in our students and train them for the jobs that are available today and the jobs that are coming. We want them to have a job. So that's going to be a real key investment. We want to see cuts in red tape and regulation. So when you ask about where are the cuts going to be, red tape and regulation is a good place to start. But investing in our youth, investing in our students, those are critical pieces that we'll need to grow jobs. We've made a commitment to return prosperity to the people of Ontario. We want an opportunity for families to succeed, and everything we do, every single thing we do will be for the people.
Go ahead.
Well, I want to follow up on an interesting point that Catherine made with respect to where you see investment on behalf of the provincial government. R&D, the tech sector, a lot of folks are saying this could be Silicon Valley North, not Ottawa, but it would be Toronto. I know you're the premier of the province, but if we can talk about the key city, you know, love it or hate it, it is Toronto. Do you see more of that Google money, that Facebook money, that infrastructure spending? Do you see that coming to Toronto? Are you going to make it easier, to Catherine's point, to have American businesses or foreign businesses come here, set up shop, contribute to our economy so that our kids, you know, the younger generation doesn't have to go to the U.S. to find a good job?
Yeah. So to look specifically there, as Finance Minister of Ontario, we will continue to work with all of the other ministries to look at where these investments need to be made. Premier Ford was very clear during the election of the serious investment to be made in infrastructure. We have healthcare investments to make. We have education investments to make. But I go back to the prospect of the commitment to lower hydro rates, ending cap and trade, cutting corporate taxes, cutting small business taxes, and making that business environment appealing and attractive again for the businesses that were fleeing Ontario. We're hearing from them. They want to be back. They understand fully and clearly that Premier Ford is open for business. And that's the message that's out there. It's gotten out there already, and we're starting to hear from corporations who are interested again in Ontario. They feel they can come back.
In terms of revenue generation for the province, small part, of course, but thoughts on cannabis generation, revenue generation? What are your expectations?
It's really, I don't want to say an unknown number yet, because it's just not tested. We don't have a comparator out there. We can't use Colorado as a comparator. We can't use the other province that started yet.
Can't use a city like Amsterdam.
You really can't. So we're planning, our staff is planning for the best possible rollout of online and bricks and mortar locations. We're planning these to optimize in a safe and convenient way for people.
People like to plan, right? People are curious about cannabis. They're curious about housing. People like to plan. This is my roundabout way of asking the question. If I got to look at my calendar, what date would I say? This is when I have to be at BNN Bloomberg, because that's when the finance minister is releasing the budget. When do you think we could see something like that from your party?
We're continuing to look at what the markets need from us as well. There are some dates states that quarterly reports will come out in July, and another midterm report, another report will come out in August. The public accounts will come out September, October. The fall economic statement, if I can call it that, is in November. So there are lots of opportunities for the market in July, August, September, and up to November to have a full and clear understanding of where we are today and where we see ourselves going in the future, and the path to prosperity for Ontario.
What can we expect, though, in terms of timing of actions? And when we take a look at Minister Elliott just over the past couple of days.
Right, that was swift. That was swift.
It's swift action.
Yeah.
Can we expect the same thing from you and your file?
Well, I think you've seen it already on a lot of the other files that have come out and been released over the last couple of days. Look, Premier Ford is all about getting things done for the people. We know that people need relief, and eliminating the cap and trade tax is the first major action in a signal to the people of Ontario that Premier Ford is honoring his commitment, honoring the commitment of this government, and bringing real relief to families. It's just so exciting to see the swiftness at which Premier Ford is moving. Do
you or Premier Ford have any plans to perhaps meet with U.S. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin or President
Trump?
I would leave that question for the Premier and his team of schedulers. I know that it's a priority. It's a priority for him to meet with the governors at this particular juncture. I know that we've got ministers, fellow ministers, whether it's trade or housing. Each is now getting into their files and understanding very swiftly and very quickly what are the immediate needs, what needs to be done today, this week, next week, to make sure that we're on our path for prosperity.
What's the immediate need with Hydro One?
Well, bringing relief to families. You know, we've seen that file was used as a real. Again, I'm going to sound a bit blunt. It was really used as a slush fund and a plaything by the Liberal government, and that's
how so?
Well, we saw decisions were made that benefited Liberal Party as opposed to the people of Ontario. These photo ops that were, really on the backs of families, the pain that it has brought, that needs to stop. We need to bring relief, and so you'll see, I would suggest you'll see smooth action on the hydro file.
You're talking about smooth action. We're talking about swift action. We also know that in an unprecedented fashion, we've got your premier, our premier, essentially calling back the legislature. Rare seating that's going to happen, I believe, the week of July 9th. So that speaks to your point of getting down to business quickly. You did mention here and there that you caught a few things in the books. Minister, what's been the biggest surprise for you thus far? I know it's just a couple of days on the job, but what did you open up and look at and say, oh my goodness, I've inherited this?
Well, certainly both the Financial Accountability Officer and the Auditor General have been very clear that there are omissions. You know, when you've got an auditor that gives a qualified opinion, you know, this is unprecedented in Canada.
By saying that the Liberals underestimated the deficit by double. So they said $6 billion, it's really $12 billion.
But it was even the year before that. It was the first time in our history that we had a qualified opinion, and that was even before the deficit had actually doubled. So we know that we need to do, as Premier Ford has called for, a commission of inquiry. Right. And separately, a line-by-line review. And again, we need to get in and do an assessment, understand the practices that are in place and make any necessary changes in those practices, and then develop the list of efficiencies that can be found. And again, without any job losses, much like the OHIP Plus. That's a big...
put it back to the insurance companies.
And it's for first off, right? Before you dip into it from a taxpayer's perspective.
So nobody 25 and under will be without the coverage, and it will be less money for the people of Ontario, and nobody lost a job. That's an efficiency.
Let's talk a little bit more, though, about finding these efficiencies. You talk about what you've inherited with respect to the Liberals. We also have credit rating agency Fitch recently. Now, in all fairness, it happened, I think, just days into you coming into power, but Fitch coming out and basically downgrading the credit outlook for this province. It's gone, I believe, from stable to negative. Still maintaining AA status, but now there are just some questions with respect to the Liberals' plan, which we talked about a few minutes ago, and that deficit spending. How important is it for you to assure the credit rating agencies and, like you said, the business owners and whatnot, investors, that we are open for business and we are ready to go?
Well, Moody's did the same weeks in advance when the Liberals were still in power. In fact, they did it while the legislature was still sitting, so it was in advance of the election. There are no surprises with what we're putting forward. We're looking for these efficiencies. We don't want any job losses. We know we want to bring relief to families. I'm talking now in the eyes of a credit rating credit rating agency looking at what we're doing. We are going to honor commitments in our cap and trade, but we're going to get out of that cap and trade tax. We're lowering small business tax rates. We're lowering corporate tax rates. They understand how that creates jobs. We're making a better mood for the business community to want to invest here. That will be appealing to the agencies. They know that we want to get to a balanced budget. That's our goal. It's going to be difficult to say when, because we really do need to see that line by line. But that's Premier Ford is a business person. I'm a business person, lifelong entrepreneur. You want to make sure that you eventually come to the balance that we need to have in our books and in our life. So I think these are the points that the agencies and the people of Ontario and the business community like to hear.
Minister, thank you very much for your time today. And when will you come back?
When Catherine and Anita asked me to be back.
All right.
All right, we'll leave it on that note. Thank you very much. Anita, thank you very much.